Joining me on the program now from the Social Policy Unit, Lieutenant Colonel Ian Hutson. Ian, kia ora, good morning.
Kia ora.
Firstly, congratulations. Thank you for the work that you and the team have done putting this report together. Certainly a solid block of research, and you've done a few State of the Nations now. How many we at now, Ian? How many State of the Nation reports have you been involved with?
This is the 18th. Yeah, 18 years of it. So quite a journey.
It has been quite a journey, and I'm not sure that. Honestly, it's looking reasonably bleak in just about every sector. We'll break down some of the details in just a moment. But firstly, big picture stuff. What's the overall theme? What's the overall message that's coming through the research, Ian?
Well, our theme this year was called kainga, and whanau, which is like food, a home, and a family.
Yeah.
And the reason that we wanted to focus on that is because we see that as really being basic.
Yeah.
If you wanted, I guess it's about the narrative that sometimes is put out there about, I don't know, the economy, about growth, about, all of these things.
Yeah.
None of those things matter unless kainga and whanau are at the centre of it.
Yeah.
Basically, we think all of those things should serve people and families. And so, in a way, I think it's trying to bring that focus back, and it's the whole document sort of based on that. Yeah.
Now, I mean, that's a brilliant focus, actually, because honestly, if you haven't got food, if you haven't got somewhere to live, if there's broken relationships, who cares about the stock market? Who cares about financial returns? Honestly, in that situation, who cares about the environment? This is central to our needs as human beings, essential to us thriving and participating in society.
Exactly, and I think that's what we wanted to bring back into focus, and especially in a time when we as a nation are looking for priorities. We're going through tough times.
Yep.
Is it what is our priority, and what should we be looking at? And so that's what we wanted to focus on. And I guess we're going through a time now where, as you pointed out, some of those things are being put under real pressure, and people, and a home, those things are in the report, are coming under pressure. Yeah.
You and I bumped into each other last Thursday, in fact, at Waitangi. I saw you there. I met your wife. You're on the treaty grounds enjoying the interdenominational service and a part of that. Some of the conversations I was having at Waitangi, Ian, people talking about, what does the treaty mean? What does what does it mean in terms of the principles? Who gets to decide what it means for us as a nation? All of these big questions. But honestly, a lot of the conversations that I had at Waitangi last week, I think just about everybody agreed that that for us as a nation, we need to work at there being better outcome for Māori. Because again, in the statistics in the State of the Nation report, Māori overrepresented in the negative statistics. And look, regardless of a political flavour or strategies, I think for everyone, what do we need to do to make these statistics better? There's going to be different points of view about what should be done, but surely something should be done, right?
Exactly. And I mean, throughout the report, we actually do have a Māori wellbeing section at the end of it, and it tries to measure what kind of progress, but it does highlight what you're saying about across the board, Māori on the wrong end of all those kind of, or nearly all of them anyway.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about economic matters, for example, the unemployment rate and 400,000 people, record numbers dependent on welfare, and always right through all these statistics, you find Māori affected more so than most New Zealanders, right through the board, and so you do want to see Māori flourish, and I think what some of the discussion around the Te Tiriti about equal,
Yeah,
or whatever you want to call it, is actually the fact that Māori communities, Māori people should be involved in able to shape their own destiny. And I think that's what the Tiriti is all about,
yeah.
and why it's so important that we look to honour it and to include it in these kind of conversations, because what we've been doing up till now isn't working,
Yeah. And I
whatever
think it's a
way
key
you look at
measure,
it.
I suppose, if one sector of society isn't thriving disproportionately to other sectors of society, then there's something is broken in the model. But can we break down some of the sections? Because I mean, there's 5 key areas. I understand
Yeah.
this. Hidden in there is some good news, I'm sure. We will be able to find it
Yes.
as we unpack some of this, Ian. But where would you like to start with this?
Well, how about if we look at children and youth? That's the first section,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got we have a scorecard in these, and a bit blunt and not always. I mean, I can explain them a bit more, but across children and youth, we had about I'm sure about 8 or 9 different categories, and we
Yep.
had child poverty, which has worsened
Mm-hmm.
in the last year. Although the stats we have for that are a year out of date, so
Okay.
it was worsening. But we're expecting that'll come next week, and with some of the other indicators going on, including the unemployment rate, we're expecting that to worsen even from what the report
Okay.
says.
Okay. I mean, this is a snapshot. This is a moment in time, but it's
That's right.
also showing a bit of a trend. Any good news for children and youth? Are there some positive
Yeah.
stats in there as well?
Youth offending has improved, and that's something that, in a way, saying it's improved, it's not a huge improvement, but in a way, it's not. It's good news in a long-term sense, but I think what happened is that over the last few years, the narrative around youth has been quite negative.
Yeah.
And if you look at the 10-year trend, youth crime, particularly the group of people that we've been, government has been, and the society, I mean, with the ram raids, I think there was the impression given that
Oh, yeah.
youth
Yeah.
offending has ballooned, right? But the most persistent offenders, 3 or more serious offences, is a thing we track in the report, and it shows over a period of 10 years, it has declined significantly, and it went up after COVID. Maybe that was because over COVID, they didn't have the opportunity
Yeah.
to,
Too
you
much time
know,
on their hands,
maybe, I don't
like the
know.
rest of us, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
afterwards it went up again,
yeah.
and but also because of the ram raids, I think it made it look like it was a lot worse. So over 10 years, and even over the last year, it's dropped. But over the 10 years, there's been a significant drop in that. So it's good news.
Now,
Yeah.
something else, of course, which impacted youth during the COVID years is educational achievement. And it was almost like there was a generation, or at least a few years, that sort of got lost
Mm.
in that period of time. In terms of educational achievement, what's the stats on that, Ian?
Well, they are down again, and I think that's no surprise. Seems like after COVID, there's been a few reactions, and education does seem to have been affected. Although, having said that, it's been like those that achieved, what do you call it, university
Okay.
entrance have declined again. So that is concerning, and that a general trend. But one good news story in there is early childhood education,
Okay.
which is seen as right at the beginning as a positive, and that's actually a positive for Māori as well,
Wow.
because it's gone up, but it's gone up even slightly more for Māori. So that's a positive piece of news on the children and youth front.
Yeah. No, that is
Yeah.
it's good to have some positives there. Although I imagine it must be demotivating for young people at the moment with the Let's jump to the work and income section, because unemployment
Yep.
continues to be high. Very difficult to find work, and I imagine even tougher for school leavers. What's the stats
Yes.
there, Ian?
Well, maybe the one that you're talking about, when you're talking about young people, one of the areas of concern has gone up significantly. It's been a concern for a long time, really, but with this, it's been made worse.
Yeah.
Is in relation to what we call NEETs. That's not in employment, education, or training. That has gone up, I think, by about 9,000 people.
Yep.
Young people in between, I haven't got it in front of me, but up to 24 years of age, probably 17 upwards, I would think.
Yep.
I might be not totally right on that. But anyway, that's a major concern because, I mean, the numbers are somewhere in the 80,000s total,
Yeah.
but it's gone up by 9, so that's a big jump. That means they've kind of fallen out of the system,
Yeah.
right? And obviously, when it's a young person falling out of the system, you worry where that's going to, and it can have incredibly long, flow-on effects in the person's life. And so that is a big concern, that number of people. And of course, when you go in that regard, it's Māori and Pacifica
Yeah.
are hugely much more impacted than the average.
When it comes to work and incomes generally, though, it has been a tough year, difficult for people to find work, and for those who are in work, a lot of wages and salaries haven't kept pace with inflation. Tough economic times generally. What's the overall report for work and income, Ian?
Yeah, well, overall, we've got actually everything in there is a minus.
Okay. Okay.
We're dooms. Yes, employment numbers of jobs, I guess, is down. Unemployment is up. Incomes haven't kept up with inflation. Income support and welfare. Obviously, there's a whole lot more people on benefit support one way or another, and of course that tends to, because I've talked about this with you in the past, but benefits, despite what some people might think, are in many ways not adequate, and they can often mean that people fall into stress, and it touches other parts of our report, like housing and so forth. If you can't pay the rent or all that kind of thing, it does exacerbate poverty. And then hardship and food security has been impacted. Actually, that's one thing I would like to highlight in there, because I think it shows you, we've had the food in schools issues, and a couple of stats that we have in there around that is that food security indicators have worsened significantly. And one of the ones is around when they do a survey where the question is, do you sometimes go without food? Do you often or sometimes go without food? Is one of the questions.
Yeah.
And it appears that the children surveyed, and this is a regular survey, 1 in 4 children say they go without food often or sometimes. And then Pacifica, it's 1 in 2.
Yeah.
Every second Pacifica child surveyed said that they were sometimes or often going without food. That is backed up a little bit by, this is on top of, for the Salvation Army, one of the other stats is we have our food parcels that we do, and we provide. It actually would have looked like good news that it dropped a fraction, albeit considerably higher than before COVID struck. But it dropped. But part of the reason for that drop was because we've, like many other food banks and people that provide food for we've lost our funding for food, so we can't actually provide it. So
demand hasn't dropped, but supply has in that regard. Yeah.
So we can't give people as many people as we were in the past. So those are major major things. I think they're in. I think food is a huge indicator of how people are doing,
Yeah.
and the number of people who are coming or needing food is much more than it was before.
I mean,
Yeah.
as you say, this is foundational. If people don't have food, that's a key measure of how they are doing. From kai to kainga, though, housing, of course, another central aspect, and it's something that we've struggled with as a nation for a few years now. And
Mm.
there's sort of a subclass of society that just can't break through into
Mm.
a housing market or into reasonable rent. Has there been any good news in the housing area, Ian?
I think our report card is not great, but there is good news mixed in there. I suppose the report did highlight, and it's not stats that we can show you, but we had done quite a bit of connecting with other agencies like us, and what we discovered is that the number of homeless is growing, right? So that's a
Okay.
definite negative. Like
Yeah.
the trouble is getting the numbers for them is very hard.
Yeah.
There's people in tents, people in cars, people on the streets, that type of thing. But everywhere that we contacted is telling us the same story, including councils.
Hmm.
So no stats for that. That's just what we.
Difficult to count people when you can't phone them up, I suppose. But I mean, in
That's
terms
right.
of emergency housing is down. Is that good news, or is there something behind
Well,
that?
that's the thing. That's why it's mixed because basically we don't mourn the loss of emergency housing
No.
on the scale that it was. However, we do think they may have moved too fast because there is at least a fifth of the people that are no longer in emergency housing. No one knows where they went, and we suspect are some of the people and that we're seeing on the streets and so forth.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, everyone reports that now, if you're looking for emergency housing, it's much harder to get in, and it seems like it's a single male. If you're a single male, they've prioritised families, which is understandable,
Yeah.
but it means that single males, maybe single females, particularly if they've had anything like a blotted copybook,
Hmm.
you almost you cannot get into emergency. You're not counted. You're not getting in. So in some ways, those figures might be exaggerated. However, along with that, there was last year a good 4,500 new social houses were built,
Okay.
and some of those, and with work from various parties, government included, some of those people that moved out of emergency housing moved into those. So
Yes.
that was a real plus.
Mm.
And so we were really pleased with that. And that is one of our concerns, though, is recent policy looks like we might tank in the number of new social housing places for people to go because the government's really, if you like, stopped kainga in its tracks to a certain extent. So our looking forward isn't that good. So
Certainly.
yeah, mixed report there.
Mixed report there. When it comes to, I mean, you talked about Kai, the food, housing, and family, basically. In,
Yes.
in terms of the family, one of the ways of measuring that, I suppose, is social hazards, and again, it's a bit of a bleak story on this one, Ian.
Yeah, well, the illicit drugs has really spiked, like particularly methamphetamine, especially going by the wastewater testing that the police do. So that's a big concern. Although, having said that, when you look at the cost to society, alcohol is significantly more
Yeah.
harmful than amphetamine, but methamphetamine hurts a much smaller group. They estimate 1.6% of the population use
Wow.
methamphetamine, but those that use it are impacted obviously more significantly. And alcohol didn't increase in numbers, although our harmful drinking is still a major issue, and Māori are much more impacted by it than than non-Māori. Then the gambling side of things is a mixed bag, but people are losing more,
Yeah.
so that's bad. However, the number of poker machines is dropping. That's good.
Yep.
And that, as always, the poker machines are more located in deprived areas.
Yeah.
So we'd like to get them all out of there.
It's trending the right way, which is a very good thing. Something else which
Trending
is
the right way.
exactly.
Yes.
There's something else which is heading in the right direction. I understand that there's a significant reduction, or at least a reduction in household debt in the last
Yeah, well,
period.
that's a mixed one too, because there is a reduction in debt, which is good. The problem being that there's the increase in servicing the debt has gone way up.
Yeah.
So people who have a debt, are struggling, I guess, to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
So if it's a house, which a biggest chunk of the debt we have is, so it's good the debt has dropped off, but the servicing it is really hurting. And because if you're on the margins to start with, those things can hurt. So yeah, bit of a mixed thing there. Like
Yeah, so it seems like a bit of a mixed bag, but generally not such good news, although perhaps no surprises there. For people listening to this at the moment, they recognise that things are tough for most people in our society, certainly tougher than they were even 12 months ago. And for those who are already doing it tough, it's a pretty bleak situation indeed. Now, we've only had time to skim the surface of some of the categories here. It makes for sobering reading, but I think important for us to not turn a blind eye to this. If people wanted to access the report or the executive summary of the report, how can people get a hold of a copy, Ian?
It's online, and anyone can get it on our website, www.salvationarmy.org.nz. There's a fuller report, there's the summary report, and there's lots of other information there. So get it there.
Ian, we do appreciate the work that you do. Sorry it's not better news for all of us, but thank you for all that you do. salvationarmy.org.nz for more information and the full report there. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.